So we'll just jump right in. My name is Dawn Wilson. I'm the Director of Education Extension and International Programs, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening to hear about the exchange opportunities at St. Michael's University School. Do you want me to turn the lights off, or is this is good? Okay. So here's just how I see the evening unfolding. We are going to have our special guest presenters talk about each of their exchanges. I will be talking a little bit about France and Japan. And then we'll hear from Caitlin Bauer, alum of 2011, 4 years out, how it has affected her 4 years after the fact. And then we'll have a quick break, and feel free to grab some refreshments. And then we'll break into specific groups so you can ask questions of the parents and the students who have actually participated in those exchanges. And I'll be around till the end as well, so you can ask any questions you need to. So why would anyone go halfway around the world, away from their family, their comfortable home, their wonderful city, and their lovely school? Well, there are a lot of reasons, and Caitlin will talk about this more as well. But it's just a wonderful way to learn about other cultures, and the students who have come back from exchanges, I've seen just incredible growth in more ways than I can articulate. So it's an experience that's hard to explain in words, but it's just something that's sort of life-changing. That's the way a lot of students have described it when they've come back. I've noticed that this is a correlation that I've noticed that I think we'd have to do a long-term research study to prove it, but many of the students who have come back from exchange have filled leadership roles in the school. I can think of several head boys and head girls who went on exchange, heads of councils, prefects, and maybe they would have filled those leadership roles anyway, but I like to think that part of what gave them the confidence and the self-esteem and the poise was having been on their exchange. They get to take courses that we don't offer here in many cases, or learn in a very different way. Every school has its own different system of learning, and that's not something that you would learn. There are lots of other trips that the school offers, service trips and just group travel. But if you live in the country and live with a family and go to a school in that country, it's just an incomparable kind of experience that's very deep and very meaningful. So it's very different from the other types of travel that you can do. A lot of these students have made very, very long-term friendships, and many of them have gone back to those countries, or they've gone back as a family to visit the families that they've lived with and stayed with. So it's really a way of bonding not only two students, but two families, and often two cultures. Enhancing academic learning might seem a little counterintuitive to people, because students will often miss a big chunk of their coursework, but many of them have reported to me that it really taught them to be very focused, very disciplined, and very organized, and so that they can keep on top of what's expected of them and be able to catch up and just fit right back in. It sometimes takes a while, and there are gaps in the learning and time, so that's something to really be aware of and be conscious of. But it has enhanced their study skills, and I can't think of anyone who's really had a long-term deficit because of having been away on exchange. I think I sent everyone an overview of all of the different exchange destinations and the lengths of time, the cost, and if anyone would like a hard copy of that. Oh dear. I do have some copies here, but I don't want to take the time to go through every single one now. I'd like to really turn the floor over to the students who have been there, and so that they can tell you about their exchanges directly. And I'll just say a few words about the exchange to France, and they also offer Spain and Belgium. This one is a little bit independent of the school. It's run by an organization called OSEF, Organisme de Séjour Éducatif Français. And my youngest son is actually currently in France participating in this exchange. It's operated by, this is our BC rep, Louise MacFarland, and the company is a nonprofit, and I met the owner of the company when I visited France one year. She's operated the company. She started it 25 years ago, and originally it was just France, and now it's expanded to include Belgium and Spain. She takes student applications from all over those 3 countries, and then she matches them with the applications from Canada. And so it's not a school-to-school exchange, it's really a person-to-person exchange. So she looks at the profile of a student, their age, their grade, their interests, their family profile, and they try to match them as closely as possible. So it's really twinning that goes on with that exchange. This is Chloe and her partner Marie. So Chloe is now in France. She left in February, beginning of February, and will come back in April. And Marie was here in August, and she was here till the beginning of November. So it's an 11-week exchange. This is my son in the middle. He's been sending me a few photos, and I have to admit, the week before he left, I could not sleep. I was so worried. But I knew that, and I'm a huge proponent as an educator and as a parent of exchanges, so I knew that I had to let him go and I had to stop worrying, and he's doing just fine. He spent the first week, his partner Mathieu was doing exams, so he had a week off, and now they're with les grands-parents in the countryside, and next week they're going skiing. So it'll be a bit of a shock when they actually go to school, but I think it'll be a wonderful experience for him. This exchange to Japan, we have relationships with several schools, but our main partner is in Fukuoka on the island of Kyushu. It's Fukuoka Daiichi High School. It's a private high school with boarding and day students, so very similar to ours. My eldest son actually went on this exchange for 4 months. And this is Keenan Manhas, who became leader of the Athletics Council. And their school year starts in April, so this exchange can either go for a full year, and our students start in September and go till July, but my son went in April and finished in July. This is the opening ceremonies at the school in April 2nd. The students are coached on how to bow, and then they have to introduce themselves in Japanese in front of the whole school, which is about 1,200 students. So it's a good learning experience too. It's a very deep cultural learning experience because of the language and the culture. So as you think about all the different destinations and where you're going to go and so on, if you're going to go, please think about what's your comfort zone, how far away do you want to be, how different of a cultural environment do you want to be in. And parents, you need to think about what it's like to have a new son or daughter in your home for a certain period of time, because many of the exchanges involve a reciprocal homestay. And you have to think about what it'll be like to miss class and to be away from your friends and your family, and then all of what's involved to adapt to that new environment that you're going to be in, and how difficult or easy that might be for you. So just a few things that you're going to need to think about as you prepare for whether you're going to go on exchange or not. The application process starts here, and then there are 3 different application packages. This one is the one for most of the exchanges that's 20 pages long, so I didn't print out a bunch of copies, but I will email it to you. And if you're interested in Quebec, it's a different application. If you're interested in Japan, it's also a different application. So I just brought this to show that it's fairly detailed. So I don't want this to be a barrier to applying, because it does, there's a lot of information in it, but it does ask for quite a bit of detail. So set some time aside to fill that out if you decide to go ahead with it. The application deadline, it's sort of a soft deadline, is March 13th, which is the last day of school before spring break. The reason I set that is so that you're still in the mode of school and it's still fairly fresh in your mind. It gives you about a month. But I know that there are some little things that you might need to check out and people you need to talk to and things to consider. So if you want to hand it in after spring break, that's also fine. But our minds tend to stray away from school during the holidays. So if you can do it before spring break, that would be ideal. Once all the applications are in, there's a screening process with teachers and grade advisors, and then students are notified and parents are notified of the results in May, and then the planning begins because the exchange doesn't happen until the following academic year. And then we'll do some pre-departure orientation sessions with students in school before they go. So with that, this is my contact information, and I have business cards as well, so I can give those out to you at the end if anyone would like to talk more about it later. Now I'm going to turn things over to Jordan. Was going to present about Trinity Grammar School in Melbourne, but he was unable to make it, so we have Melanie and Maddie who are going to present about Trinity and Royton. So come on up.
So we left around this time when we're in grade 11, so grade 10. And this is a picture of in Sydney, which is a really common kind of trip to do with your host family. When you go to Australia, they'll take you to Sydney. Like, you stay in Melbourne, but they'll usually take you to Sydney for the weekend.
Okay, so these are our families that we stayed with. Melanie's on the left. You can talk about your family.
I was with a girl named Margarita. I wouldn't necessarily say that she was really similar to me, but despite that, we got along really well, and her family was super easy to get along with and fitting for everything for me.
I'm on the right there with my family. The girl I'm with there is Bella. She's my exchange partner, and that was her older brother that we lived with. And I can honestly say that she was my second half, and I miss her so much, and we still talk to this day. While I was there, Seb was kind of like a big brother to me, and it was amazing just to connect with our family in that way, and I missed them so much today. And it was just a great fit having a family on the other side of the world.
Olivia was the other girl who went along with us with her exchange tests. All three of the girls from the girls' schools were from completely different friend groups, but it was really interesting to see how the exchange brought them together, and they didn't even know who each other were at first, and then by the end of it, the six of us were just best friends pretty much, which is pretty cool.
And then on the other side is the boy who went to the exchange to Trinity, the boys' school. We got to know quite a few of the boys that went to the boys' school, and Jordan, I know, had a really great time. He shared a lot of his memories. I wish he was here to talk about his experiences. Josh came here a little bit later than the girls, so he came separately on his own flight. So we got to get to know him very personally. So when we got to Australia later on, it was really nice to know someone there other than our exchange partners as well.
And the girls' school and the boys' school are about a 5-minute walk from each other, so we actually saw Jordan quite a few times during the exchange, and I would see him on the bus every day. And there's a few times where we all wanted to get our exchanges together. So the photo of Jordan's exchange was at a concert that we went to in Melbourne. It was at the Melbourne Zoo, which was kind of a interesting thing to go to.
Yeah, while we're on exchange, you'll meet someone named Miss Hoskins if you end up going, if you go to the girls' school, and she takes you on lots of trips around Melbourne and different places to see different parts of Australia. And this was our trip that we went on to downtown Melbourne, and we got to look around and just kind of see the city itself. And this was, I think, within the first week that we went here.
Yeah, when we went down, we went first into the Melbourne Art Gallery, and it was interesting to see the art as well as the woman that led us around gave us a kind of like a timeline by looking at the pictures and all the artifacts like that they had in it as well. It just kind of showed the history of Australia.
And then the other place we went to while we were there on this, I think it was a separate trip with Miss Hoskins, was we went to the Healesville Sanctuary, which was probably one of the highlights of my time there, because we got to go into the pens with the kangaroo and we got to pet them, and it was really amazing to do that. It was, the sanctuary is all endangered animals from Australia, and these were kangaroo that actually came from an island in Australia where it's like a finite population, so we got to see that, and it was really interesting.
Some more photos from Sydney. Like Sydney is actually quite different than Melbourne. I found just even the temperature, like climate is different, as well as the city, and Sydney's a lot more tourist, so I'm glad that our exchange was in Melbourne, because Melbourne's a lot more of like the true like kind of Australia feel, and I found downtown Melbourne really, really interesting. It was full of like street art and performers and interesting shops and arcades filled with just like variety of restaurants, and the food there's really amazing as well.
Yeah, so Australia, going to Sydney, Australia was just one of the things that you can do with your family. It's really up to you and your family and the connection you guys have for what kind of a trip you want to do while you're there. So Bella's dad actually flew me and Bella up there, and we stayed there for a weekend. I know Melanie's family went, I think, a weekend before mine.
Yeah.
And so we went at separate times. It wasn't with the school, but if you have the connection with your family and they want to take you on trips within Australia, they definitely can do that.
Then Bondi Beach is in Sydney as well, which is one of the really famous kind of popular beaches there.
Okay, so this is more about like everyday life in Melbourne. So school life there, I gotta say it was amazing just to see the different connections that you can make. Like all the girls there were so like amazing, and we made such strong connections with them. It was just like they made us feel like we were just at home, and those 6 weeks there went by like so fast.
All of them are really inclusive, and when you get there, you get to choose your own classes as well, which is interesting because there's different classes and they provide at SMUS. So some classes that we took, such as math and English, we could do our own schoolwork that was assigned to us before we left. But then we also got to take, there's a photo of us in fashion, so we got to make skirts to take back with us, and there's a variety of different classes we could have taken as well. But I don't know, it's just like interesting to take. And everyone at school was very, very inclusive, and we talked to people in the young grades as well, and just the overall feel is a small school just like SMUS, and everyone's very connected and close, and I think like twice a week they have talent shows, and they always have assemblies, and lots of time where the whole school gets together, and they treat all the exchanges really well and include them in everything.
Yeah, so that's our next point, is that while we were at Wrighton, Wrighton has a very big exchange program there. So while we were in Wrighton, we got to meet so many different students from different parts of the world. So up top is me with a New Zealand girl who we still talk to. We've been talking to today, actually. Top right was the goodbye party for one of the girls who actually goes to a school in Vancouver that we got to meet while we were there. So, and we didn't realize that she'd actually been here for sporting tournaments and stuff. And so we see her every now and then when she comes to the school.
There's a few girls from Vancouver and New Zealand, and then I think from Ontario, Quebec, and somewhere in Asia. They only came for one day when we were there, so I forget where.
But yeah, it was really cool. So when you go on trips with Mrs. Hoskins, you'll travel in a group with the other exchanges. So we really got to know them and talk to them about how they were feeling about being away from home. So this in general is just a slide about our friendships that we made there, and it really is like irreplaceable. Like I can't even put into words how we feel about like the people that we met there. It's just like it was an unreal experience that it's impossible to put into words how amazing a time it was to be there.
Like I was saying, the food's really good. I found all the food extremely fresh, not like, there wasn't a lot of fast food or like greasy food or anything, and I don't eat, I I don't eat meat, but I do eat seafood out of that. But I find some places when I go on vacation, it's really hard for me to find meal choices that fit my diet. And I didn't find that in Australia. I found all the food just to be healthy and easy and good.
Yeah, and one of the most popular things to do for kids after school is go down this road called Glen Ferry, which is the road that connects all the schools in the area, which is a big difference to here, where our schools are really spread out. In Australia, all the schools are within a couple blocks of each other, so all the schools and the children are really connected to each other. Like, I met girls from probably 4 or 5 different schools who are all really close to each other, and they all meet down Glen Ferry, and we would go to cafes and stuff together like that. So yeah, that's pretty much all we have to say about that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melanie and Maddie. And now I'd like to ask Andrea and Oria to come and talk about Quebec. Over to you. This is Oria James and Andrea Nesminalova.
Yeah, there. Can we make it full screen?
Yeah.
There's Great. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about, well, we're presenting, first of all, Montreal, Quebec. That's where we went this January on an exchange, so we're just freshly back. And I'm first going to talk about the host family while I was there. The host families while you're there, of course, the first few days are always a little bit odd, but by the end of the first week, I absolutely felt like I was part of the family. You really do become part of their daily life. You help out with cooking a little bit, maybe with cleaning, but they also take you on these amazing trips every single weekend. My family absolutely loved to bake, and on the right there, that's a picture of 6 dozen lemon cookies. Here we are, here are some weekend trips. On the left, it was my first time I went cross-country skiing to a cabin à sucre, which is like a sugar cabin. And on the right, one afternoon, we took Andrea down to a place near the house that was great for tubing. And way up top is l'Oratoire Saint-Joseph, which is actually the biggest oratory in Canada. And we had a great visit up there, and we walked through and had a great time.
A normal day at school, Collège Sainte-Anne, would begin bright and early, like 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning. And you would take the bus, the school bus, to the stunning school, absolutely gorgeous, where I shadowed my exchange, Mary Lou, who was in the music program. There are different programs. There's a regular program, which Oria attended. There's programs for sports, all these different ones. And we attended the classes, which were filled with really welcoming teachers and super nice kids that we made really close friends with. And we went to PE classes, which were probably our favorites due to the fact that they have a gym just for gymnastics with trampolines and a pool, and including 3 other gyms like this with like climbing wall, fitness center. It was absolutely great. We also loved visiting their cafeteria and small cafe, which served fresh cookies that were warm, so you could just come from first class and just get a cookie. And we also went outside with our friends, there's a little canal and the Saint Laurent, and we would just walk across. It was freezing cold, so we stayed for about 5 minutes tops, but we had so much fun.
School atmosphere and kids. I talk passionately about this because the kids at school were by far my absolute favorite part of the trip. I felt that making friends there was very fast-tracked. Unlike SMUS, which gets quite a few boarders exchange students, the school there did not get as many exchange students, so it seemed like almost every single kid there wanted and was curious and willing to talk to you. I not only talked to the kids in my class, but in Andrea's class, and really across all grades. I talked to people in the hallways, people approached me in the cafeteria, people came and said hello to me outside. It was really quite an ego booster, honestly, to have so many people wanting to come talk to me. There was never a point where I felt like I could only talk to one group of people. Even though the school is very big, bigger than here, the community is very, very tight. And I was accepted by everybody. I could go up to anybody in the hallway and ask a question. I could go up to any kid, no matter what grade, and talk to them, and it was totally fine.
My very kind host family took me and Oria to Quebec City, where we visited the Montmorency Falls, which is just on the left. And we drove up the Saint Laurent, which is just on the right, top left, right. It's all there. And we saw ice sculptures like everywhere. We shopped for a while, we bought new things. We got beaver tails, and we even went down the slide, which is like in the center of Quebec City. And we got to ride down it. It was so much fun. We went, but my favorite part was probably Hôtel de Glace, which we slid. There's a slide made of ice that we slid down about 20 times. We found different ways to slide down it by not standing, because that's dangerous, but close to standing. And we had our own little dance party, because there was like a little disco in the center, but nobody was dancing, just me and Oria. And there's these amazing rooms that we didn't stay in, unfortunately, but we saw all of them, and it was truly an unforgettable experience.
School outings. We were there for 4 weeks, and we went on 4 different outings with the school, as well as the outings that we went on with their host families. This was one of our outings. We went to Musée Grévin, which is a wax museum in downtown Montreal. So you can hear, actually you can't hear anything, you can see that I am hanging out with my good buddy Apple Boy and a few other people. After this experience, we went out to eat at a very nice restaurant. And on one of the other days, we went and visited Vieux-Port, Montreal, which is the older part of Montreal, where we were able to go outside skating on an outside skating rink, which was attached to a canal/lake that had frozen over. And after that, we went and had smoked meat poutine, which was absolutely delectable.
That's great.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much, and I hope you go visit, because it's amazing.
All right, well, thank you, Oria and Andrea. And you can talk to them, and Andrea's mother, Ivana, is also here, so she'll be able to answer any of your questions as well. Now I'd like to ask Zach and Claire to come and talk about their exchange to India.
So we're going to try and condense 5 months into 5 minutes, so a lot of stuff's going to be vague, and you have to ask questions afterwards.
Okay, so we spent 5 months at Woodstock School in Missouri, Uttarakhand, India, which you can see is in the northern part of India. So the school is 7,000 feet up in the foothills of the Himalayas. So it's like surrounded by huge mountains, and it's really beautiful. Like this.
And that.
Yeah, so that's the school you can see there. The part towards the right is all of the dorms, and then the part towards the left is all the school.
So what does a normal day look like at Woodstock? You wake up at 6:30, your room will never be that clean. You go to school from 8 o'clock to 4:20 in the afternoon. There are 7 classes, they're all reasonable length, and they're all really fun. A lot of different classes than you'll take at SMUS. Different APs you can take. If you're a 9th grader currently and you're going into grade 10 and thinking about it, you can also take APs in grade 10 there. Just more of the school. You get passage after school, and you have to take it 2 or more times a week. There are different activities. You can go into the arts, you can go do sports, do all sorts of different stuff. You're taking sports?
Yeah, so like Woodstock offers a lot of sports. They offer basketball, soccer, cricket, a bunch more sports too. So you can choose to play on a team, and it's really cool because as like a team you travel to you travel to other schools in the area. You travel to some of the boarding schools, but you also travel to some of the schools that the local people attend. So it's really interesting to see all of the different schools there. And then
What was the last one?
it was a soccer picture.
All right, carry on. You can do arts while you're there too. There's a musical and whatnot. Neither of us did them, so we're not really knowledgeable. Carry on.
Good arts.
So you do the CARE program, which is their service program. You get service hours for it and whatnot. Different people can do different things. I chose to work with one of the nearby villages, help building schools and providing for the families that had been there. There's a recent flood. Long story. Questions later. Carry on. Study hall happens from 7:15 to 9 in dorms, and it's basically just a time when you're forced to study.
Okay, so there's so many benefits to going on an exchange, especially to Woodstock. India is such a different place, and it's such a different culture, and you get to learn about that. While we were there, we lived with people from India, so we got to learn a lot about it. We also got to celebrate all of the holidays. So while we were there, we celebrated Independence Day and we celebrated Diwali, and we got to get all dressed up in traditional Indian clothes, and have presentations about it, and see Indian dancing and other things, and it was really cool. Another benefit of going to Woodstock is the academics. So Woodstock is the sixth ranked international boarding school in the world. So the school there is really good. They get teachers from all over the world who have a lot of experience, and you get to learn from all of them.
Surprising amount of Canadian teachers.
Yeah, lots of Canadian teachers, lots of Americans, Europeans, lots of Indians, everywhere. Another benefit to going to Woodstock is you get to go to school and you get to live with people from all over the world. So there's Americans, Australians, Canadians, Europeans, Russians, Tibetans, Nepalis, Indians, everywhere. It's really cool to get to live with them, and you get to learn a lot about it.
It's a different kind of diversity than SMUS. There's a lot of different cultures there that don't come to SMUS and whatnot, so it's a really interesting mix. Dorm life is amazing if you're not already in dorms. If you are in dorms, then sort of like being in dorms right now. Although we've heard it's a better kind of dorms from Calcaden. So in the guys' dorms, you live with three other people, and other than that, it's really no different than usually living in dorms. It's 3 other guys in your room, and then there's 60 of you or 80 of you to the floor, depending on how many people are in your grade. And there's lots of different activities you guys do together, and you get to know all the people really well, and it really ties you together with all the people at Woodstock.
Living in a girls' dorm is pretty similar to living in a guys' dorm. So you usually have 1 roommate. You can have up to 6, but usually it's just 1. And it's the same as what Zach said. You get really close to everyone. And what's really cool about Woodstock is almost everyone's a boarder. So you get really close to all of your classmates. And the grades are a little bit smaller, so you get to know everyone really well. So another really cool thing about going to Woodstock is its setting. It's in India, in the Himalayas, and it's surrounded by forests and mountains and things like that. So while we were there, we got to go on Activity Week, which is kind of like out trips, but at Woodstock they call it Activity Week. So what I did is I spent a week in a national park in India called Corbett National Park, and we went on hikes, and as you can see,
She saw elephants.
Yeah, we saw elephants, and we volunteered in the local community, and there was a huge river near our campsite, and we went and swam in the river, and it was really nice and really clean, and yeah.
Lots of hikes you can do in India as well, especially through the school. You get a bunch of people together and you go on hikes every couple of weekends or every weekend. You can join different clubs that go on hikes. For Activity Week, I went on a hike for a week and just hiked up one of the big mountains in the region, camped around, and came back down. It's a good time. You have different camping trips you can do on the weekends. Just some cool photos from that. And you can do rock climbing, which neither of us did, so we're not very knowledgeable about that either.
The school has a huge rock climbing wall, though, and you can go climb in the mountains sometimes, which is pretty cool.
It's really interesting stuff. Anyway, that was India in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire and Zach. And Zach's parents, Teresa and Richard, are here, and Claire's mom, Sylvie, is also here. So, and one of the features of this exchange is that the school organizes a trip through India afterwards in December, and Richard and Sylvie will be able to tell you about that as well. So please talk to them after we're done. And I'm sorry to rush this, but there are so many different amazing locations, but I know that everyone has the very specific ones that they'd like to find out about. So that's why I'm being pretty brutal about the timing. So Jasper and Oria, please come up and talk about your exchange to China.
你好，我叫 Jasper， 我16岁，上11年级。
你好，我叫 Oria， 我也16岁，我上10年级。
We're here to talk about China, obviously. We traveled there last March, and it was an amazing experience, but here's why. So our first thing that we're going to talk about briefly is why China. And for us, we both take Mandarin at the school, and I personally have been taking it since grade 6. And I've always wanted to go to China ever since I learned that I could. And it's such a fascinating language and such a fascinating culture. And it was really great to go and sort of get a sense for where everything is coming from in terms of a lot of things that are manufactured in China, and knowing more about the Chinese culture, and how we've got so many boarders at our school who are from China, and it's just great to get to know more about their background and where they come from.
I chose China because my mom is from China and I have a pretty extensive Chinese background. I've visited family and I've gone sightseeing, but I had never attended a school or really thoroughly understood the Chinese school life. So that's why I chose China.
So we went for 3 weeks in total over March break, and Miss Wilson was kind enough to accompany us as we went. And we also went with another student, Emily Jordan, who couldn't be here tonight, but she's in grade 12 currently. And so a typical day, we would travel to 2 cities, Zhengzhou, which is in sort of middle China type thing, and in the Henan province. And then we also traveled to Shanghai, and we stayed with 2 different host families while we were there. So it was very different at the 2 different schools. When we were in Zhengzhou, it was a middle school, so it was grade 6s through grade 9. And I personally stayed with a boy named Yishuan, and he was 13 years old. And we would get up in the morning at around 6. I'd have a shower. I'd eat a breakfast of rice and some meat and such. And his parents would drive us to school. We'd go to school. And there were a number of classes. I kind of lost track. I think there was also sort of like 7 classes in the day. And the day would go until like 4:25 in the afternoon, 5 o'clock, when we'd get let out. But sometimes the rest of the school would sometimes stay for classes, but we were lucky to sort of get out early. It really depended. And while we were in Shanghai, it was a high school, and I stayed with a boy named George, or Wang Jialin, and he was my age, and we got along really well because we were the same age and had many of the same interests, including sports and fine arts and education. And it was a much more dramatic day in a sense. I had to get up at 4:45 a.m. type thing, and have a shower, eat breakfast, and take the subway. We'd walk 20 minutes to the subway, take the subway into central Shanghai, and go to school. So for me, that was quite a traumatic experience because it was pretty busy. I was kind of the only Caucasian person there, and eventually by the end of the trip, I actually went on the subway by myself and walked there by myself and took the train, and it was quite a cool experience and an accomplishment for me. So that was pretty cool.
School life, as Jasper said, school life, it's quite a bit longer there. I was usually up around 5 or 6 in the morning, at school around 7-ish, although I know most of the kids were there more around 6:30. A lot of kids stayed at school until 8 or 9 at night because after normal school ended, they stayed behind to go to classes. There's such a competition there, and in order to get ahead, you needed to take these after-school classes. It was, one person took it, that person can't be ahead, and then the whole class took it. I believe it was somewhat of that kind of a culture. Most days were half class, half activities. Our days were mostly extremely booked. In the morning we had class, math, science, socials, history. Let me tell you a little something about that math. I was in grade 9 last year, and I was with the grade 7 girl. She was 11 or 12, I believe. And the math that she was doing was at least 2 years ahead of the math I was doing, and try hard as I may, I could not understand anything. Mostly, I just stood amazed at what these kids were accomplishing. And then afternoons, we had we had activities. Here you can see we got dressed up in traditional dress. We had a bit of a fashion show, actually. I wish I could add the video. And on the right there was dumpling making. A few other activities was Chinese calligraphy, Chinese art. We had sword dancing / movement lessons. And on the bottom are class presentations and a music presentation. Before we left for China, we had Emily and me and Jasper, we had all created PowerPoints about our life in Victoria, about St. Michael's, and also about home life. And so while we were in Zhengzhou in the middle school, a big part of our day was actually circulating around to classrooms and explaining our life. And it was the most amazing feeling. The classes were humongous, first of all. There were like 60 kids in a class, and you got this booming applause after you presented. And it wasn't just at the end, let me tell you. It was like, click the space bar, an animation shows up, it's like a picture shows up on stage, on the page, and it was like clap, 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 clap. It was really actually kind of hard to get through the presentation because the clapping was crazy.
Yeah, at one point, we would show the picture of our houses, especially, because many of them live in apartment buildings, and so we would show them our houses, and they'd be absolutely amazed that we lived in houses, and as opposed to apartment buildings. And yeah, it was just quite an amazing experience, as Oria was saying, to go around and talk in Mandarin and in English, and connect with these students and share with them our lives. And we eventually, one morning, I think we did like 10 different classes, and they said that their other campus wanted us to come speak, and so they drove us like 45 minutes. We thought it was close. It was 45 minutes across through the city, and we went to their other campus where we then spoke in front of another 70 students. They had us sing Justin Bieber with them. They haven't gotten the memo yet that Justin Bieber isn't quite as popular as he used to be, but he's pretty popular there, so we sang with that, and it was just very cool. We ate lunch with their principal as well, so that was quite an honor.
Yeah, culture there, the pop culture seems like it's exactly the same as Canada, I felt, except it's 2 or 3 or maybe 4 years behind. So when I went there, Baby by Justin Bieber was all the rage. Like, everybody sang it, everybody knew it. It came up a lot, it really did. It was every class, every day, almost.
Yeah, so home life, for the sake of time, it was interesting. We both went with families and they had siblings. Some of Oria's families had more than one child. Do they have 2, 3, 2? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. And all of my families were just one-child families. But it was really interesting. There wasn't much time to spend with the families, and it was quite tough generally because the parents didn't speak much, if any, English. And so that was kind of difficult, even though I speak some Mandarin. It was still difficult to communicate and try to get my needs and my dislikes of food. I'm a fairly picky eater, and so that was really tough for me. But I got through it somehow. So that was cool.
The Zhengzhou Outings.
Yeah, that's nice.
Sometimes instead of having just activities in the afternoon at school, they drove us places. One of the places we went to was the Shaolin Temple in Zhengzhou, and it was these beautiful temples, and we were able to watch some Shaolin warriors practicing and doing these amazing flips, and we saw a presentation, kind of like a dancing, not dancing, like a warrior act that they did that was so incredible. You know, they were able to break glass and wood with their head and like pinky finger. It was astounding. Haidilao Huoguo, hot pot, one of my favorite places to eat because you were waited on hand and foot. It was a hot pot place. People washed your hands for you. Different story. Henan Museum, we visited several museums, quite a few really. Henan was one of my favorite, and we had a great time there.
We'll sort of speed through this. Shanghai was really great. We visited the Pearl Tower, which is pretty iconic as part of the skyline. That was really unique. We got all these wonderful jumping shots of Oria and Emily. I probably took a few hundred of them in various locations because I'm somewhat obsessed with that. Shanghai, I love Apple, and it was quite sad that Oria couldn't remember Steve Jobs' name earlier. I'm sorry, that hurt me. Yeah, so I made sure that we went to all the Apple stores possible. There's this beautiful one here in Shanghai that we visited, and we also visited a number of cultural sites right in downtown Shanghai, as well as another city my family went to called Suzhou, which was just a few hours drive outside of Shanghai, and it's called the Garden City of China, and it's actually the sister city of Victoria in China. But I didn't know that at the time, but it was pretty cool.
Cultural differences. Obviously, food was a huge difference. Even though I eat Chinese food a lot at home, it's not really what you expect. Whenever you go to a Chinese restaurant here or to a Chinese buffet, it is really nothing like that food. In fact, I don't think I ever had anything buffet-like the whole time. It really is rice 3 times a day, Chinese vegetables 3 times a day, and some kind of cooked meat. Language was obviously a huge thing, even though Jasper, Emily, and I have a small understanding of Chinese. They always speak very, very fast, and they have an accent. So, to be honest, I'm not sure I understood very much at all of what anybody said at any one time. Kids' responsibilities at home, it's quite different than Canada and the US. Culturally, there's a lot less kind of responsible pressure on kids on the home front. They're not expected to cook or clean, really. Parents get them up in the morning, make their lunches. But the kids have incredible amounts of homework. You know, you get home late, maybe 8 o'clock. You study until 3, go to bed, get 2.5 hours of sleep, wake up in the morning. It wasn't unusual to see 5 or even 6 kids sleeping in class. It wasn't rude there. You know, teachers don't wake them up. They're not made fun of. They can't function in class. They actually cannot be awake for the whole day.
As our final point, as we're running out of time, it was a great cultural experience, and certainly for anyone in Mandarin, it would be a great chance to learn. And if you're not, well, it's still a pretty cool opportunity to absorb the culture. In terms of afterwards, if any of you have any questions, feel free to come. I have a whole 24-page journal that I kept while I was there every day, so you're welcome to read through that, or I can talk about it. Another amazing experience was talking on the very first day, after having 6 hours of sleep and jet lag, we spoke in front of 2,200 people in Mandarin. We had to introduce ourselves outside at their big flag ceremony, kind of like the Japanese welcome ceremony. And it was quite nerve-wracking, and everyone was kind of laughing and quite amazed as well. Huge applause after we spoke in Mandarin, and they were all very impressed, but it was pretty cool. So, yeah, thank you for listening. Is there anything else you want to say? No.
And Mary Lou Emerson, Jasper's mom, is here as well. She wants to find out about some other exchanges. Maybe Jasper's going to go somewhere else. But feel free to talk to her or to... oh, not Jasper, I'm sorry. Aisha, his sister. And finally, I'm going to ask Caitlin Bauer to come up and talk about her exchange. She went to Germany, which is not one of the exchanges that we offer. She actually went on her exchange before she came to SMU, but she's an alum from 2011, and now she's just going to talk about her impressions 4 years out. If I can find it. There we go.
All right. Yeah, so I'm here to kind of give the post-secondary perspective on things. I'm now almost 4 years out of SMUS, so getting towards the end of my undergrad. And the title may seem kind of cheesy, but looking back, exchange really did change my life. The year that I spent in Germany probably was the most single formative period of my life, and really has influenced and continued to influence many of the opportunities that have been presented to me, and also the choices that I've kind of made. So I went to a city called Überling. It's in Baden-Württemberg, which I don't know if you can see. I've tried to highlight the state on the left-hand picture. The capital is Stuttgart. Maybe that's a city that some of you are more familiar with. And the town that I lived in is on a beautiful freshwater lake, which actually acts as the border between Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. So that was a pretty unique situation to be in. This is the beautiful, beautiful city, beautiful town, it's not a city, that I got the chance to spend 12 months in. Yeah, that's a picture of myself and my host sister Eliza when I was 16, so beautiful picture. My reasons for going, the school that I was at beforehand, I didn't feel particularly academically challenged. I wanted to challenge myself, I wanted to experience something new, Bilingualism was something that was quite important for me, and I had taken German lessons before, but I was not like fully functional at all in having a conversation, so I figured what better way to gain bilingualism than to make the leap and get that experience abroad. I wanted some independence. I was curious about other parts of the world, and as my parents like to say, I wanted to stretch my wings a little bit. So some things that you can expect when you are abroad. You might feel scared or overwhelmed. This was something that I know I definitely felt from time to time, and talking to other friends who have done varying lengths of exchanges, it is a feeling that can come up, maybe not in the first few weeks, but once you start getting into the daily grind. Tiredness, like lots and lots of tiredness. First of all, there's gonna be jet lag, and then if you are dealing with a foreign language, simply the brain power that it takes to put together a grammatically correct sentence and attempt to express yourself the way that you want to be understood takes so much more effort than it does in your native language. And so I found myself, especially for the first couple months, sleeping a lot more, well, like a couple hours more each night than I probably would have in Canada. So that's just something, like, know that that's normal. If that's you when you're abroad, that is something that you can expect. My next point, even if you're going to an English-speaking country, sometimes the slang or the context that they'll use words in might not be completely the same as what you're used to, and so again, that's normal. Just remember that. And there will be differences. Some of them might make you uncomfortable. That's okay. Just remember that you are in a different part of the world in order to see and understand those differences a bit more. And my last point on things to expect is expect the unexpected. So the picture at the bottom of this slide was actually taken in Switzerland. We had a mandatory field trip that we did, and our teacher, who happened to be the physical education and outdoor leadership teacher, mentioned to us one evening, well, actually there's this really amazing mountain and it's only a half an hour drive away, and if any of you want to go mountain climbing, you know, we could stay a day longer and arrange that for you. And if you would have asked me before I went to Europe if my first experience mountain climbing would have been that year, I never would have told you that that's what I was expecting. But being open to those crazy experiences, you know, they really do make for the most amazing memories. So my tips for success: be open to new experiences. Again, remember that other places do things differently. Be patient with yourself. This is a really important one, especially if you're dealing with a language barrier. You know, fluency will come, but it's not gonna come, you know, the second week that you're there. It will come over time. So keep trying and things will progress, but just remember to have that patience with yourself. Things might not always go according to plan. That's an important one to keep in mind when you don't necessarily have your support system right close by, and because of the time difference, you might not be able to call home at the times that you're used to. Try and reach out and don't be afraid or nervous. So this may seem a little silly, but for some people in the schools that you might be going to, it doesn't sound like any of you had this experience, but some people might find the idea of you as a foreigner intimidating, and so they might be afraid to come up and approach you. So if you want to get to know someone, like, don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, do you want to go grab a coffee after school? Or I ended up joining the volleyball team, and that was a really cool way to get to meet some of the girls. Live in the moment. So the earthquake in Haiti actually happened when I was there, and I was talking to a few of my friends that I'd made, and we decided that we would approach the administration, and we ended up organizing a benefit concert to send money through a charity. And again, never an experience that I thought that I would be doing. I ended up public speaking in German in front of 800 people at the beginning of the concert. Wouldn't have thought I'd done that before I went, but living in the moment, you end up having some really amazing experiences. And the last point, don't forget to call your parents. They do need to know you're okay. Yeah, I mean, you don't need to call them every day, but like at least once a week or every few weeks, I'm sure that would make them really happy. Yeah, so how exchange changed my life. I'm sure if my mom were here, she would agree that it gave me a lot of maturity and self-confidence that I didn't have before I left. I definitely gained a lot of world perspective. Obviously, bilingualism, I'm now like fully functionally fluent in German. All of my classes were in German when I was there, so I read, write, speak, all of that. I think it also helped prepare me for leaving home for university, because as much as I was living with a host family, I had that prolonged period of time away from my parents where I got to adjust to kind of a different pace of living, which was really important for me. I developed contacts around the world. It ended up affecting my career and university choice. So on the right-hand side, there's a picture of me in front of the front doors of Sciences Po, which is a university in France, the first university that I attended after SMUS. I went there for a little over 1 semester. I had some health issues come up, so I'm now at university in Canada. But I can honestly say if I hadn't done the semester in Germany, I wouldn't have known about Sciences Po. I wouldn't have picked up the program I was in was taught in 3 languages, so I wouldn't have felt confident enough with my German to apply to a program partially taught in German. And lastly, it gave me a sister and a second family, a place that I really do call home. Yeah, I am still in contact with Eliza. It's been almost 5 years. I call her parents on their birthdays and on Christmas. We're still very much in touch. So it's a pretty wonderful place to be in where, you know, you can still have these incredibly strong contacts years later into your life. I figured I would include this slide, so a parent's perspective. I was talking to my mom about this topic before kind of starting the presentation, and she was saying she thinks it is a way for parents to get a preview of what it's going to be like when your children go away from home in a little bit less permanent of a way, which can be a really wonderful thing because it allows your children to kind of stretch out and get those new experiences, but you know and they know they're coming back. And, you know, it can also give parents and students a break from each other. Teenage years are a joy for all of us. And I know for my mom and myself, after I came back from being away for a year, our relationship was just so much stronger because we'd had that time apart. And grade 12 was probably one of my favorite years, just being back and really appreciating that time that I had with her before going away to university. So yeah, that's my mom and I at SMUS graduation. Other reasons for going, or if I have not convinced you yet, today's world honestly is a lot more global. An exchange can really help give you that competitive edge, whether you're thinking career-wise in terms of companies hiring or in terms of specific university programs that you want to get into. I would really argue that exchange gives you kind of a chance to develop what some people call a global competence. And if you're able to develop that or show people that you've developed that at an earlier age, they're more likely to be confident in the fact that you can handle almost anything later on in your career. So it's just something to consider. The picture on the left-hand side, that is me with all of my classmates right outside of our school in Germany. And the picture on the right-hand side is us at the top of the mountain in Switzerland. Yeah, so what's next and what exchange has to do with it? The very silly picture of me on the left-hand side. Obviously, I now cheer for the best football or soccer team in the world because of my time that I've spent there. Go Germany. Yeah, Sciences Po, I don't regret my choice to go there at all. It was a really wonderful experience. I wouldn't have found out about it or felt comfortable applying if I hadn't gained that fluency in Germany in my 11th grade. And I'm actually leaving in 3 weeks' time to do a university exchange to the Berlin School of Economics and Law. So exchange continues to be a big part of my life. And Eliza, my host sister, is actually going to be picking me up at the airport. So it's funny, you know, how small the world can be. That's it for me, but if any of you have any questions or comments, I'm going to be sticking around for a little while, and I also put my email address up there. If any of you want to get in touch at all, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I can. Obviously, I didn't go on a SMUS exchange, but you know, I do have some experience living abroad. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Caitlin. So are you convinced? And are you confused about where to go? I hope it's not too confusing. I'm sure everyone has very specific ideas about what they'd like to do and where they'd like to go, and there's all those things to think about. So we're going to now break into the groups. Just before we do, I'd just like to say a special thank you to all of our student presenters for spending an evening with us and telling us about their exchanges. So thank you so much.